You're prepping for a campaign and you reach out for a monster, but nothing reaches back to take your hand. Maybe your characters are in a dwarven mine. You want some sort of magitek suit that the dwarves use for excavation. Or maybe you're in a high-level campaign and there's just not a lot available in those CR ranges. And many of the fights that are there drag on and on without ever putting the characters in any sort of mortal peril, which is kind of antithetical to how we think of the pacing as stories. These characters have reached heights that nobody else has reached. Now they're going to put their lives on the line to stop some sort of catastrophe. If we don't stop Vecna from doing whatever he wants, then who will? You could try to proxy something. You flip through the book and find, I don't know, an ogre and say, it's close enough, the players won't know. It's a good solution. I just personally find it dissatisfying, and it won't help you with high-level fights. You can't proxy something if there's not something close enough that already exists. There are many great third-party books. I have many of them, but I still often come up empty-handed. There's nothing close enough to what I want, and that means I have to homebrew something. Hi, I'm James, and on this channel I talk about the things I think about, plan, and plot for my tabletop role-playing games. If you like that kind of content, then there's buttons down there for like and subscribe. Today I'm thinking about homebrewing some monsters. Whenever I do try to proxy something, I often walk away thinking, that didn't really feel like the thing that I thought it was going to be and I wanted it to be, and it would have been better if I just, thought it up myself. Somebody's screaming, but balance, how do you know it's balanced? For that, I use hit dice. Those things that you don't think about until it's time for a rest. Hit dice are hit points, but in guaranteed smaller numbers, and they're baked into D20 system design. Yes, characters get levels, but there is no character that gets 2 hit dice for a level and no character that gets 0 hit dice for a level. They are exactly the same thing. Monsters get different hit dice because they are built to face off against 4 players. Some monsters should crumple under a hero's assault, and others should weather it. When you're designing encounters, it helps to use the smaller numbers. You can think about 2 9 hit die characters rather than a 32 hit point wizard and a 95 hit point barbarian. It simplifies the clutter. This next bit is going to get a little bit mathy, so there's chapters in the description if you want to skip this bit. Monsters get hit dice that range from D4s to D20s, and they have con modifiers that range from -1 for pixies to +10 for Tarrasques. But most monsters sit in the D8 to D10 range with con modifiers that get them +3 to +5, and that means that a hit dice gets them on average 10 hit points. How many hit dice can a party clear in a given round? There are many different scales and ways to calculate the average damage of a player. 2 popular ones are a basic fighter and a warlock. These damage per round calculations are meant for players that are trying to optimize their character, and they are under perfect conditions, no dwindling resources, no other encounters, and a flat battlefield. They're called theory crafting for a reason. And as a previous Mythic Raider, I appreciate theory crafting. But your experience at the table will probably not match that theory. Because we have to design our encounters in a fog of uncertainty, I plan encounters around how long I think a fight should last, assuming that the players were only able to bring to bear basic attacks and cantrips. A character doing the bare minimum, swinging a sword or casting a cantrip, will do about 5 damage. That includes everything from D4s to 2D6s, daggers, firebolts, great swords, sacred flame, all of it. Then the ability modifier might kick in. Casters don't get those, and melee characters do, but not equally. Rogues don't get them on every dice that they roll, and fighters get them on every swing, so I average that out to +2 to their dice damage. That makes the average damage that a character will do about 7. 4 characters will do about 28 damage. But because I'm trying to make encounters that are worthy of heroic characters, I am going to assume that one of the characters is not as efficient as they could be. They might be unconscious, or maybe they're fleeing. I believe that in the adventuring business, this is called a tactical withdrawal. I also assume that another character is going to go help this player, and that brings the damage down to 14 damage per round. Close enough to 1 hit dice for me. I'm not pretending that this is precise. Eventually the players are going to get extra attacks, and then fireballs and scorching rays will become less precious. Over time, the ability modifier features less and less in the party's overall damage and more in the fighter's damage. Sometimes characters are going to miss, they're going to critically hit, they're fumble, sometimes the monster makes their save. So I flatten out this curve to 1 hit die per round per average party level. Only basic attacks during a fight would be very boring, But if I start with these assumptions, I will not annihilate the characters. The fight won't drag on, and the players will still feel some fear that a character could die without feeling like the fight is malicious. I'm not saying just have the players hit the monster a prescribed number of times and have the monster drop dead. I know there are dungeon masters that are doing that, and if they and their tables are having fun with it, then cool. What do I care? But I personally find it boring. I roll damage and hit points because I don't want to know the outcome. But as a dungeon master planning for my players, I have to have some idea of what's going to happen because the players are not the average. They are a singular instance here. There are dots somewhere on the line. Is Lady Luck going to be with them, or is she going to totally abandon them and they have to survive on wits alone? That uncertainty is engaging. And as a dungeon master, I don't want my monsters to not have any teeth, but I also don't want the encounter to outstay its welcome. Skewing the health towards the player's ability to overcome it and the damage towards danger allows me to have a plausible outcome because it's so short. They only have to last so long. The rest is up to the players and to the dice. Levels 1 and 2 are kind of their own beast. If you play those levels at all, you know that any hit could kill these characters. In Cragmaw Hideout, at the end of the first dungeon in Mines of Foundelver, you face the Bugbear Clark, and in 2024, he does 3d4 plus 2 points of damage. That is 1.5 hit dice against characters that have 1 hit dice. That is why he is so deadly, and that is not even mentioning that famously lethal Goblin ambush. For the Pathfinder 2e fans, this is why your characters get hit points from both their ancestry and their class. By level 3, these hits had started to separate into 3 tiers. To save from being confusing with currently existing game mechanics, I'm going to call the first hit Annoying. Does about a quarter of the character's available hit dice. And Dangerous hits that do about a half of the character's available hit dice. And Lethal hits that do no more than the character's total available of hit dice. If you're planning a level 20 encounter for level 20 characters, then that monster or encounter needs to have at least some attack that takes the round that does 20 hit dice worth of damage. Think that's too much? Check the damage on an Ancient Red Dragon's breath weapon, and keep in mind he is probably doing that on more than one character. Imagine you're trying to build like a small horde encounter, 6 monsters against like 4 level 9 adventurers. Each monster in that case should do like 2 to 3 hit dice of damage. That could be 2d8 plus 2, or 2d6 plus 6, or 3d8 spell damage. It's all going to average out to about 2 to 3 hit dice of damage. Keep in mind when you're making choices for dice that the larger dice numbers and more dice are more intimidating. If you roll 2d10 plus 10, that is going to have a higher average number of damage, but it gets to be about 21 damage. But if you roll 66, that looks more intimidating to the players, even though it still ends up being 21 average damage. How many hit dice should a monster have to weather the party's attacks? A party of 4 can do about 1 hit dice of damage per round per level of the party. Sure, a party of level 3 level 1s could probably do 1 hit dice of damage. But if your monster goes first, one of those characters may not be available. 4 level 7s should do 7 hit dice of damage per round. 5 level 20s should do about 25 hit dice of damage every round. A basic rogue can pull off 11 hit dice of damage every round because of their backstab. I also assume a hit. You could try to work in hit rates into the math. You could say 10 damage with a character that does a plus 7 to hit versus an AC of 18 is a 50% success rate against an AC of 14 is a 70% success rate. So that works out to 6 average damage. That is technically correct.
Bureaucrat Conrad, you are technically correct. The best kind of correct. I hereby promote you to grade 37.
But your players will not care if the average party would have been successful if they're the ones that got obliterated. If you lean on the side of your attacks succeeding and they miss, then the party will feel lucky. For the Pathfinder 2e players, yes, I play that too. I take the average AC of the party and give the monster about a 50% or so hit rate. That will be enough to make the tanky characters feel good about their life choices when the monster misses, and encourage the squishier players to get out of the monster's face. Let's make some monsters. Let's imagine that we have Sir Hypothetical and his party, the Conjectures, and they're now level 15, making that final push into the upper levels in the end of the campaign. And they need to go do something proper legendary. Let's say that they're going to go find the Medusa, not just a Medusa, the Medusa, along with the Oracle Delphi. She is now an oracle and she can reveal secrets to the gods that Athena would prefer that the players not have. They're going to have to do all the things. They're going to have to cross the river Styx, maybe bargain with Charon, find the island of Seriphos, make their way through this crumbled ancient temple that is cursed by the gods, finally meet Medusa and learn the secrets that the gods would prefer that they not have. Medusa in this context may not fight. Hard to have a conversation if you've just caught off her head. Even if you had Speak with Dead, she'll probably tell you to get bent. So we need another boss. Let's put in Orthus. Also a legendary creature from Greek mythology from the same litter as Cerberus, so we'll make him our boss monster. But I want 2 other encounters in here, because while it is a temple, and that means I'm probably going to put some traps and some puzzles and some things to have the players spend some resources on, or be clever about, I want to discourage the players from just being able to go Nova on Orthus. So let's put some Harpies in here. Not piddly CR1 Harpies, but Harpies that could properly challenge CR15 players. So we've got our boss monster and we've got a small squad. Another classic encounter is just a mob of small little creatures. There's this style of column in Greek architecture called a Caryatid. It's the columns that look like actual people. So let's do some classic Medusa stuff. What if instead of them being columns, they are the stone remains of those that Medusa turned to stone, but they've been animated by the curse of the gods to come out and defend the island so no one can get to Medusa. These are adventurers who are level 15 about to go into a temple to learn secrets that they could use to challenge at least one of the gods. I want them to feel that level of heroism. And nothing lets players feel heroic than letting them raffle stomp all over a bunch of little tiny monsters. So I'm thinking like 8 Caryatids. Yeah, that's a lot, but I'm going to make them really simple to run and die really easy. So I'm thinking like 6 HD. Well, why don't you just use minions? I played 4E. I know about minions. I've used them in Pathfinder 1, Pathfinder 2, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and now in 2024. I like minions, but at least one of my current players really objects to minions. They don't like the feeling that if they rolled lowly on their fireball or something, that the minion would still live just because they failed their save. It feels like I'm giving them a victory rather than them having earned it, even though functionally they're rolling a bunch of dice and that's completely random. So I have to find a way to give the players what they want to feel, and this is my answer to that. A 6-hit dice monster making a save against the average damage of Cone of Cold will live. It matters if the player rolled high or rolled low. It matters if the monster made their save or if they failed it. For the Caryatid damage, I'm probably aiming for annoying. That's about 4 hit dice for a group of 15 level adventurers. When I go to write the stat block, that'll probably be like 46 plus 4 or something like that. Enough to be annoying, but not dangerous, unless they mob up on someone. So I put them in 2 squads of 4 creatures, and I spread them out so that some are 30 feet away from the party when the battle starts and some are 40 feet away from the party when the battle starts. That way they all get there, but not all of them do damage in the first round. But if some player like the monk, in my groups it is always the monk, jumps into a group of 8 monsters and wonders why they get raffle stomped, then I am going to empathize over the character death. They do, after all, have resurrection. They can bring this guy back. The player's bad call is not my fault. I design plausible encounters, not sure victories. After annihilating the Caryatids, the players are probably feeling pretty good about themselves. I need to remind them that this place is dangerous, and if they do not take it seriously, then their characters may legitimately die. So let's put them up against our Harpies. For the Harpies, I want this encounter to last no more than 4 rounds, probably 3 is the target. And that means that each Harpy should have 15 hit dice, because the players at level 15 can carry 15 hit dice. That's 45 hit die total. They'll be able to handle it. Keep in mind that a rogue at this level is busting out something like 8d6 a round in damage for backstab, which they should be trying to get. I want the players to think tactically. And you throw in a fighter or a barbarian and a couple cantrips, and the Harpy is done. If the party splits damage, a character could get in trouble, but not for long. Once one of the Harpies is dead, the players are going to clear this up pretty fast. I'm aiming for dangerous damage levels from these Harpies, so about 7 hit dice per Harpy. I'm going to spread it out over a couple attacks so that I might miss here and there. So we'll do 2 claws for multi-attack, 2d6 plus 4 per claw. If they manage to hit both, they get a bonus action shriek that is a small AoE, like a burst, 10 foot, that does 2d8 sonic damage, con save to avoid the stun. If they ignore the stun ability of the Harpies and they let them just keep going, then they might get in trouble. That'll encourage them to gang up and try to clear one out so they don't keep getting stunned over and over again. If I was doing this for real, I would not use just 3 Harpies. There's no real choice when all the monsters are the same. I think that's why players split damage when you do that kind of thing, because which one of these is the most dangerous? Mixed units force that choice. Now you can tell what they are, and now the players can start to strategize around, well, we need to kill this one first over that one. No, that one's more dangerous to me, and if you can clear that, I'll be free to do whatever they're going to do. So I would probably have done like a Minotaur, a Harpy, and a Lamia. Make the Minotaur a bruiser, the Lamia some sort of a long-range caster or cleric, and the Harpy a hit-and-run kind of creature. But I have a feeling I'm going to ramble in this video, so I just went with the Harpies. Apologies. With a solo monster, we need to disrupt the player's plans, or else they're just going to reach for whatever deals the most damage. That is an absolute right answer, not an engaging choice. So we need to give the player something else to think about and consider other than just straight damage. That could be something to stop, something to save, something to steal. It can also just be Zin is unconscious 60 feet away from anyone that has a heal. For damage, Orthus has 2 heads. That's clearly going to be multi-attack. And for bosses, I go straight to dangerous pain tier, at least in their primary zone, melee or ranged. This can be 4 hit dice of damage each head. That way I could split them if the fight's going badly and I want to take it a little bit easier on the players, or I can combine both heads if I want to crank up the damage and bring up some of the pacing of the fight. Now I need some way to take Orthus from just dangerous damage to lethal damage. I have 2 dogs, and sometimes they want the same toy, and then they play a game of tug. What if Orthus, like the Harpies, does more damage if both heads hit the same target? Then the Harpies are telegraphing what the boss is going to do. So if both heads hit, it's a bonus action to play tug that does 8 hit dice of damage, strength save for half. I'd probably make the strength save like a 13. I want the players to fear failing, not get guaranteed damage. Total damage on Orthus is now 8 to 16 hit dice of damage. Orthus is definitely going to jeopardize a player. Orthus is literally a legendary monster. He should. I want this fight to last about 5 rounds, maybe 7 on the outside. On paper, that's about 45 hit dice for health, and my players could dish out that damage. And if I was going to make him a legendary creature, give some immunities, give some bonuses that the players would have to figure out the fight, waste maybe a round going, oops, wrong spell, I would lower that down to 35 hit dice. That ends up being about 350 hit points. Right now, somebody is sitting there typing about con modifiers. So if the rest of you will pardon me just a little bit of math, we're talking about the average roll on hit dice and then adding the con modifier. Probably give Ortho a con of like an 18, so that gives him like a +4 ability modifier. He's D10s because he's a large creature. The average roll on a D10 is 5.5. 5.5 times 35 ends up being 192.5, so it goes up to 193. 4 times 35 ends up being 140. 193 plus 140 ends up being 333.
3 is a magic number.
The math works for the game, not the game for the math. I'd also need to give Ortho some other abilities to spice up the encounter. I want to give him some way to close the distance with ranged players. Maybe he has a leap bonus action that allows him to leap up to 30 feet but not take attacks of opportunity, and then he can do both his head attacks. But he's given up the bonus action to play tug. Again, I want the players to worry about their characters possibly dying during this fight. I want it to be a possibility, but I'm not trying to win. I'd also want to give him an AoE effect. Maybe a howl that does dangerous psychic damage, 10d8, con save for half. I also want to give him some weaknesses. He's a dog, so maybe the players could use intimidate or animal handling to keep both heads from focusing on the same target. If I was a player during this encounter, I would ask to create an illusion of Ratatosker to distract the dog.
This must be the squirrel that tends the world tree.
That delectable aroma. Could it be? Pardon the intrusion. Ah, yes. Amber resin. Delightfully nutty with a hint of squidding.
No.
There are dungeon masters who say high-level characters are impossible to put into jeopardy, or that high-level fights take too long. We control both these things through one mechanic, hit dice. Think about things in terms of how much damage should a monster be able to put out to put a character into danger. How many attacks should a monster be able to weather before they've outstayed their welcome? Use the simpler numbers to sketch out the encounter. And then when the sorcerer drops their only 7th level spell on the Caryatids and then they ask for a rest, tell them, you want to take a rest in the land of the dead. Sure, you can do that, but there's going to be consequences for it. You've planned for them not to be able to rest. You've planned for the worst case scenario. Until next time, Dungeon Masters, remember you're a player too. Try to have some fun.